So at the end of 2025, the World Bank released the Digital Progress and Trends Report 2025, which would be report number 2 in the series because the first one is in 2023. And it's by far one of the best reports if you're interested in AI policy. And tell you why. Because this report does not just cover policy in the developed nations, it also covers perspectives of what is happening in policy in the developing world, in the global south. And actually that excites me because AI is a very interesting technology. In fact, the report does one of the best framings you will find when you are trying to understand AI. The report makes an argument that AI, not only is it a transformative technology, but it is moving incredibly faster than any other transformative technology we have had before. And I looked at the statistics, I looked around for myself, and I found some interesting numbers that I want to bring to your attention. So when we think about transformative technology, we think about the industrial age, and we think about trains, for example. We think about internet. We think about electricity. Well, actually, AI can also lie in those buckets of transformative technology. Now, the difference is the speed with which those technologies gained mass adoption. Let me call it a relative number of like 50 million users. Electricity, for example, it took about 49 years to get about 50 million users, households using electricity. When you look at the internet, it took about 10 to 13 years to gain mass adoption. That is very different when you actually look at AI, because AI crushed those numbers in incredibly impressive record time. With AI, ChatGPT was launched in November of 2022, and by January of 2023, we already had 100 million users using ChatGPT. So what took internet about, it took internet about 10 years to even get 50 million. AI did that in 2 months. I mean, we already had users, 100 million users using AI. Now, I have to admit, because those other technologies required incredible infrastructure to actually get adoption. Think about trains, think about electricity. You have to build the electric lines, and then you have to onboard people, and it's a practical, intensive thing. With AI, it is software, which you can just simply download and you're connected. So let's give it to the other transformative technologies there. But the reality is, AI is moving much faster as a transformative technology than any of the previous technologies before. Now, why is this important? Because AI is a productivity multiplier. But let's not go into that. Let's go back into the report and find out, what does the report say? The report found that while developed countries are focused on frontier large language models, actually it's opposite in the developing countries. Developing countries are focusing on what they call small AI. And I think this is leveraging open source models to fine tune and use those models for local contexts, like in agriculture, in education, and in other services. But it says for these developing countries to leverage small AI, they must invest in the fundamental forces. And these forces are crucial for leveraging the benefits of AI and also managing the risks. The forces are as follows. The first C is connectivity. One of the biggest challenges of actually leveraging AI in developing countries is the lack of the digital infrastructure required to connect and use AI services. To connect, not only do you need network coverage, like the signal is coming to you, you also need to have a device that connects to that signal, but you also need to have money to buy the internet. Now, internet in developing countries could be in data packages, or it cannot be like broadband that you pay for a monthly big package. Those, considering monthly packages, you are paying about a quarter towards a half of an average monthly salary. You can see that that is a lot that is charged for internet in developing countries. This report argues that for developing countries to leverage small AI, they still need to have good connectivity, which is the digital infrastructure, the mobile devices, and to make sure the network arrives and people can connect. The second C is compute. Compute talks about the chips, the data centers, the cloud services, the servers. Now, interestingly, majority of those compute resources are actually predominantly managed in the US. Like cloud services are dominated by Amazon, Azure, Google provides services as well, and other providers. So for countries in the global south to leverage AI, they also need to negotiate servers, compute, cloud services, all that in their policies. The other very important C discussed in the report is context. Now, context is talking about using locally relevant data to fine-tune or even to train AI so that AI understands local contexts. The current frontier models are predominantly trained on English and a few other languages, but there is a rich lack of diverse training data when it comes to training AI models for the global south. And partly that is because there isn't enough of available, ready, rich data sets on which AI can train. While majority of written content online is in English, you might be surprised to learn that dominant video and audio resources on the internet are actually not in English, they are in other languages. AI needs to be learning from non-English training data sets as well, so that when it arrives in local context, it can understand how to actually help people. The other C is competency. Now, competency is the robust digital skills required to innovate, adopt, and adapt AI. This is very important because it is not enough to import already frontier AI models just into local contexts and believe that they're going to really help and solve problems. For AI to serve people in those countries, it must really understand their context. And for it to understand their context, hopefully there is going to be people who have skills who can adopt those AI models and fine-tune the open source AI models and adapt them for local context. So for a country to benefit truly from AI, it has to be innovating in a way. Innovating does not mean competing with the giants. You don't have to build the next incredible chip as a country to compete and leverage AI. But you might have to innovate on how you use AI. For example, in Africa, there is something called mobile money like M-Pesa and others. That is a technology that actually comes from Africa that is not necessarily in the Western world, where Africa has leapfrogged over the Western world by innovating. So for us to benefit from AI, no matter where you are, your country has to actually innovate. Digital skills are going to be one of the fundamental things that drive AI adoption in developing countries. So those are the 4 C's that the report discusses. I think this is one of the best reports to read today if you're interested in AI policy.